The year is 1914. Bay Ocean wasn't a church or even a spiritual community, but they were a people of faith who were searching for something more. They'd come to this narrow spit of sand off the coast of Oregon, seeking a version of heaven that was first conceived in the mind of Thomas Potter, a real estate developer who knew how to draw people. Potter told them about the views of the Pacific Ocean to the west and Tillamook Bay to the east. He sold them on a way of life, a resort that would eclipse Atlantic City and even the French Riviera. And the people came. Hundreds of families bought into the vision and purchased lots. Hundreds more rented tents to live in for a day or for a week, to live like they couldn't live for the rest of the year, and to make memories. Well, less than 10 years after his vision, signs of success were everywhere. Residents enjoyed tennis courts, a bowling alley, a 1,000-seat movie theater, and even an indoor natatorium, which featured a first-of-its-kind wave maker and a heated pool. And every Wednesday and Saturday, couples danced the sunset as they took in the beauty of the ocean, ribboned in pink and peach and orange. And the band played into the night as the waves shimmered in the moonlight and then crashed against the sand. Well, the problem was overlooked at first, which is understandable since the residents were too busy dancing to notice such a thing as the sea swallowing the sand. The Army Corps of Engineers said they could help. In order to calm the waters and change the current, they'd need to build 2 jetties, and it would cost a lot, but the government was willing to split the cost with the people. So the developers and the residents, the year-rounders and the summer folk, talked it over and wrung their hands and decided to build just 1 jetty and to see how that went. And so they did. And the band played on. Every Wednesday and Saturday, the couples twirled and the kids played in the sand. Less and less of it now since the 1 jetty had been built. The current changed, but the ocean seemed angered by the half measure, the 1 jetty instead of 2, and it started coming aggressively for Bay Ocean. But the band played on. Every Wednesday and Saturday, the couples twirled and the kids picked up pieces of the first house that fell into the sea. Eventually, the people started to panic and argued about who was to blame and debated about what should be done. What was once a disturbance had grown into a full-blown disaster. But the band played on. Every Wednesday and Saturday, the couples twirled as they could, while the ocean took the natatorium, the real waves sweeping away the man-made ones. And just 20 years later, the ocean turned the peninsula into an island without a tent, without a house, and without even a single resident. And finally, the band played no more. Well, in many ways, Bay Ocean became what its leaders had hoped. It was a place where people could escape life's problems, where they could focus on enjoyment, merriment, and memory-making. It was consumerism at its best. Unfortunately, cultures marked by consumerism are unable to differentiate between disturbance and disaster, between what's undesirable and what's unacceptable. As long as people feel like things are okay, then the band plays on, and decisive action is avoided. While the tide swallowed the beach, dances continue to be held twice a week. The story of Bay Ocean holds many lessons for the church. The American church as we know it is dying. It is being swallowed by the tides of consumerism, and the erosion has been steady for a while now. According to Barna, over the past 10 years, church attendance in America has dropped from 48% to 29% of the population, and those numbers are pre-COVID. But our problem is not a virus, it's our foundation. It's the belief that the church can thrive on a foundation other than Jesus-style disciple-making. Together, we've been blinded by consumerism. We've believed that 1 jetty solutions such as better worship, better programs, and better preaching are a better way to make disciples than what Jesus modeled. We've lost our way. So what can be done? Embracing a 2 jetty solution isn't easy. It costs a lot and demands even more. Any church who wants to make disciple-making their core mission must build a foundation based on Jesus' example. There's a lot that can be said about this, but I'm excited to share with you a proven and effective process for turning the tide and making disciple-making the core mission of the church. The process starts with a disciple-making leader. In order for a church to have disciple-making as its core mission, the pastor must have disciple-making as his core mission. He can't just celebrate it, delegate it, or automate it. He has to demonstrate it. If the pastor doesn't personally and relationally make disciples, then there's little hope of it ever spreading to others. But when a pastor is the visible example of what he hopes others will become, it's powerful. Yet we know that for many pastors, becoming a disciple maker is a great challenge. Most have simply never had any training in disciple making. But the lack of training and experience aren't the only obstacles. Many must also overcome past hurts, personality preferences, and low emotional reserves in order to become a disciple maker. Others must shift paradigms from seeing themselves primarily as a shepherd to seeing themselves primarily as a trainer of disciples. Many pastors need help in the process. The truth is, there's no substitute for a living example. And when a pastor has someone to model what it looks like to disciple others, they're able to learn much more quickly. When they're on their own, however, most simply don't make it, not because of obstacles, but because of well-worn paths to lesser goals. It's worth the effort, though. God has called us to live great things, not simply to speak about them. Pastors who become relational disciple makers are surprised by how fun it is. My team and I are used to having front row seats as pastors discover a vibrance they'd never known before. Even pastors who are nearing the end of their careers are amazed to see God transform lives and raise up new disciple makers through Jesus-style disciple making. It starts with one. It always starts with one. And when the fire is white hot, pastors tell us they will make disciples long after they retire. They will make disciples until the day they die. But a disciple-making leader alone isn't enough to establish disciple-making as the core mission of the church. The second step in the process is to form a core team of disciple makers. I'm talking here about a team, not a group, and that's a big difference. Groups are common in our consumeristic culture. Churches are full of them. Consumers join groups, programs, and events to meet their own needs. But a team happens when individuals join together to pursue a purpose greater than themselves. In fact, teams cannot fulfill their mission without one another. I've recently published an ebook with discipleship.org that's a deep dive into how to build a core team of disciple makers. CORE is an acronym which stands for Common Vision, Owned Individually, Relationally Resilient, and Endurance to the End. A core team wasn't my idea, though. It was Jesus's. He stepped away from the crowds in order to pour into the few. Each of the 12 disciples were on a journey of becoming like Jesus, but together they were a team committed to the mission of Jesus. The result was a team that couldn't be moved off of its mission, and it endured to the end. Jesus' team is the reason we know about him today. Imagine what would have happened if he'd only focused on the masses. Well, in churches, a core team helps the disciple-making leader maintain clarity of the vision, especially when distractions or disaster threaten the church's direction. Establishing the core team isn't easy. Download the free ebook, The Foundation of a Disciple-Making Culture, to learn how you can develop such a team. Finally, no church is able to develop a team of disciple makers without having disciple-making metrics. Simply put, we measure what matters. Disciple-making requires measurement that's different from bodies, bucks, and baptisms. If we only measure those traditional metrics, then we will never really know whether our disciple-making efforts are effective. Disciple-making metrics maintain the integrity of the vision. They help ensure that the mission is lived out, not just talked about. They are how disciple-making leaders measure where the rubber meets the road. In addition to traditional metrics, churches should track those baptized over the course of 5 years. After year 1, how many are still in the church, and how many are being discipled? After 3 years, add the question, how many of those are discipling others? After 5 years, add the question, how many are in church leadership? These questions will help your church better understand how well you are reaching the lost and growing them to maturity. More broadly, measure how many disciple-making chains of 3 or more generations emerge in your church year over year. This metric helps you discern whether you are making disciple makers or just disciples who don't make others. After all, no church can be satisfied with dead-end discipling. Finally, help the congregation develop measurable missional habits. These practices are to be done outside the church, such as serving someone, having a gospel conversation, or eating with a non-Christian each week. Metrics matter, but don't forget the first 2 steps in the process are a disciple-making leader and a core team of disciple makers. When we combine those with disciple-making metrics, disciple-making can become the core mission of your church. In closing, the true story of Bay Ocean confirms that hindsight is 20/20 and that insight follows experience. Imagine how differently Bay Ocean's leaders would have responded if they'd known that just building 1 jetty would make the problem worse, but building 2 would have solved it. When it comes to disciple making in the church, Navigators Church Ministries brings the benefit of our experience to you. Our team is spread across the nation and walks alongside over 1,000 church leaders each year to help them establish disciple making as the core mission of their church. What we do is simple yet powerful. We help pastors become relational disciple makers. We help churches form a core team of disciple making. And finally, we help them establish effective disciple making metrics. Together, these help churches go all in on disciple making. If you're ready to begin working on a 2-jetty solution to establish disciple making as the core mission in your church, we'd love to help. Start by downloading our free ebook, The Foundation of a Disciple-Making Culture. Then email us for a free consultation on the current reality of disciple-making in your church. Then together we'll work with you to build a 2-jetty solution that will stand up to the tides of our culture.